I found my husband's 23-year-old secretary sitting in our kitchen that morning. When she looked at me with those doe eyes and said, "Your husband is having my child," I thought my world had ended. By sunset, they would both learn what it means to destroy the wrong woman's life. Standing in my own kitchen on that crisp autumn morning, I felt like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The marble countertops I had picked out 3 years ago, the fresh flowers I had arranged just yesterday in the crystal vase, everything looked surreal as I stared at Amanda Wilson, my husband's young secretary, perched on one of our bar stools, like she belonged there. She couldn't have been more than 23, with perfectly styled blonde hair and wide blue eyes that made her look even younger. The contrast between us couldn't have been more stark. Me in my silk robe, hair still messy from sleep, and her in a fitted black dress that probably cost more than most people's weekly salary. My husband Michael's taste in women was apparently as expensive as his taste in everything else. "I'm sorry to come here like this," Amanda said, her voice trembling slightly. But there was something in her eyes that didn't match her apologetic tone. "But I thought you should know. Michael and we've been seeing each other for the past 6 months, and now I'm pregnant with his child." The words hit me like a physical blow, but 15 years of corporate law had taught me how to keep my composure even when my world was crumbling. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white, but my voice remained steady. "Does Michael know you're here?" Amanda shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "No. I wanted to tell you first. I thought you deserved to know before everyone at the firm finds out." How considerate of her, I thought bitterly. The girl who had been sleeping with my husband for half a year suddenly developed a conscience. But something about her demeanor, the way she sat in my kitchen with such confidence, told me this wasn't about conscience at all. This was about marking her territory. "I see," I said, walking to the coffee maker with measured steps. "And I assume you've taken a pregnancy test? Have you seen a doctor?" "Yes to both," she replied, pulling out an ultrasound picture from her designer purse. "I'm 8 weeks along. Michael he was surprised when I told him yesterday, but he said he'd handle everything. He promised we'd figure it out together." I wanted to laugh at the naivety in her voice. Michael Harrison, managing partner at Harrison & Brooks law firm, didn't figure things out together with anyone. He calculated, manipulated, and controlled. I should know. I'd been married to him for 12 years. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, my voice perfectly pleasant. "Oh, I'm sorry. Probably not in your condition." Amanda's smile faltered slightly. She clearly hadn't expected this reaction. Where was the screaming? The tears? The dramatic confrontation she had undoubtedly rehearsed in her mind? "No." "Thank you," she said, suddenly looking uncertain. "I should probably go. I thought you should hear it from me." "That's very thoughtful of you," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee with steady hands. "And Amanda? One more thing before you go." She paused, halfway off the stool, looking at me expectantly. "You might want to ask Michael about the Harrison family trust. Specifically, the infidelity clause his grandmother insisted on including." I took a sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. It's quite interesting reading material. The confidence in her eyes flickered, replaced by something that looked like fear. Good. She should be afraid. Because while she had been playing house with my husband, dreaming of a future funded by Harrison money, she had no idea who she was really dealing with. I watched her hurry out of my kitchen, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. As the front door closed behind her, I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Sarah, it's Rebecca. I need you to pull every file we have on the Harrison Family Trust and get me an appointment with Judge Matthews, the one who oversees the trust." I paused, a cold smile spreading across my face. It's time to remind my husband exactly what he stands to lose. The game had begun, and I was about to show them both that hell hath no fury like a woman who knows exactly how to use the law to her advantage. Michael might be the managing partner, but I hadn't spent 15 years specializing in trust and estate law for nothing. By the time I was done, they would both learn that some mistakes come with consequences they never saw coming. After Amanda left, I sat at my kitchen island, mind racing with possibilities. The Harrison Family Trust wasn't just any trust. It was a $50 million empire built by Michael's grandmother, Eleanor Harrison, a woman who had survived 3 cheating husbands and had made damn sure her grandchildren wouldn't follow in their footsteps. The infidelity clause wasn't just a suggestion, it was ironclad. I pulled up the trust documents on my laptop, though I hardly needed to review them. I had helped Eleanor revise them 5 years ago, something Michael had conveniently forgotten. My fingers traced the words on the screen as I recalled Eleanor's voice. "Make it bulletproof, Rebecca. Some lessons need to be expensive to be learned." The front door opened, and I heard Michael's familiar footsteps. He was home early. Amanda must have called him. I didn't turn around, keeping my eyes fixed on the laptop screen as he entered the kitchen. "Rebecca," he said, his voice carrying that smooth, controlled tone he used in the courtroom. "We need to talk." I took another sip of my coffee, still not looking at him. "About your pregnant secretary? Or about how you're about to lose your share of the family trust?" There was a moment of silence, then the sound of him setting his briefcase down. "She told you." It wasn't a question. She did more than tell me, Michael. She came to our home, sat in our kitchen, and showed me the ultrasound. I finally turned to face him, taking in his expensive suit, his perfectly styled hair, the way his jaw clenched slightly, the only sign that he was worried. "She's quite confident you're Amanda. Already planning how to spend the Harrison money, I imagine." He moved closer, but stopped when I held up my hand. "Becky, listen." "Don't call me that." I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Only my husband calls me Becky, and right now, I'm looking at a stranger." "This isn't what you think," he started. But I laughed, the sound hollow and cold. "Really?" "Because I think it's exactly what I think. You've been sleeping with your 23-year-old secretary for 6 months, and now she's pregnant. Please, tell me what part I'm misunderstanding." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration from the usually composed Michael Harrison. "It was a mistake. I never meant for any of this to happen. We can fix this." "Fix this?" I repeated, standing up slowly. "Like you fixed things with the Peterson case last year? Or like you fixed things with the offshore accounts? Some things can't be fixed, Michael. Some things can only be paid for." His face paled slightly at the mention of the Peterson case. "What are you planning?" I walked to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn of our Beacon Hill home. Everything. Perfect. Everything controlled. Everything about to change. I'm not planning anything. I'm simply going to enforce the trust's infidelity clause. You remember that clause, don't you? The one that says any beneficiary who commits adultery forfeits their entire share of the trust? "You wouldn't," he said, but there was a tremor in his voice now. "I already have." I turned back to him, smiling coldly. "I have a meeting with Judge Matthews tomorrow morning. Eleanor made me trustee for a reason, Michael. She knew someday someone would need to enforce that clause. I don't think she expected it would be her favorite grandson, though." He moved toward me, desperation breaking through his composed facade. "Rebecca, please. That trust is my inheritance. It's my future. We can work this out. I'll end things. With Amanda, You'll what?" I interrupted. "Make her disappear? Pay her off? She's carrying your child, Michael. Or did you forget that part?" The color drained from his face completely. The child? It could be a mistake. The timing? 8 weeks. I said quietly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's what she told me. Shall we check your calendar? That business trip to New York? The one where you insisted on taking your secretary instead of your wife? He sank into one of the kitchen chairs, the reality of his situation finally hitting him. The great Michael Harrison, brought low by the very legal system he had manipulated for so long. What do you want? He asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I walked to my laptop, turning it so he could see the trust documents. I want you to understand exactly what you've lost. $50 million, Michael. Your share of the family trust, your position as managing partner, because let's be honest, the board won't keep you once this gets out, and your reputation in Boston's legal community. All gone because you couldn't keep your hands off your secretary. You're going to destroy everything we've built, he said, a note of anger creeping into his voice. No, Michael, I corrected him, my voice steady and cold. You destroyed everything. We built the moment you decided to sleep with Amanda. I'm just making sure you pay the proper price for it. I gathered my laptop and coffee cup, preparing to leave the kitchen. At the doorway, I paused, turning back to him one last time. Oh, and Michael. You might want to call Amanda. She seemed so interested in the Harrison family money, I'm sure. She'll be fascinated to learn there won't be any. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse early, my Louboutins clicking against the marble floors as I made my way to Judge Matthews's chambers. Sarah was already waiting for me, a thick folder of documents in her hands. In her 15 years as my legal assistant, I had never seen her look so eager. Everything's ready, she said, falling into step beside me. I've compiled all the evidence, emails, hotel receipts, text messages. The private investigator really came through. She lowered her voice. And you won't believe what else I found. I paused, turning to face her. Tell me. Amanda Wilson isn't just any secretary, Sarah said, a glimmer in her eye. Her father is James Wilson of Wilson Technologies. She didn't need this job, or Michael's money. This was about something else entirely. The pieces started falling into place. James Wilson, the tech mogul whose company was currently involved in a massive intellectual property dispute. The same dispute that Harrison and Brooks was handling, with Michael as lead counsel. How interesting, I murmured, my mind already racing, with the implications. Get me everything you can on Wilson Technologies' current legal troubles. And Sarah? Find out who else at the firm has been working on that case. Judge Matthews was already in her chambers when we arrived. Her silver hair, pulled back in its usual severe bun. She had known Eleanor Harrison well. They'd been in law school together, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes as she reviewed the documents. This is quite serious, Rebecca, she said, looking up at me over her reading glasses. The infidelity clause is clear, but the implications, this could destroy Michael's career. He destroyed his own career, Your Honor, I replied calmly. I'm simply ensuring the trust is properly executed according to Eleanor's wishes. The judge nodded slowly. And the pregnant secretary? What about her? That's a separate issue, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Though you might be interested in some additional information we've uncovered. I nodded to Sarah, who handed over another folder. Judge Matthews's eyebrows rose as she read through the new documents. Wilson? Technologies? This goes beyond a simple affair, doesn't it? It appears so, I agreed, which is why I'm also filing a motion to have Michael removed as lead counsel on the Wilson Technologies case. There's clearly a conflict of interest. The judge sat back in her chair, studying me carefully. You realize this won't just affect Michael? This could impact the entire firm. I'm well aware, I replied. But Eleanor Harrison built that firm on principles. She wouldn't want it compromised by someone who can't keep his personal and professional lives separate. Just then, My phone buzzed with a text from the private investigator. Meeting in progress. Wilson and Harrison, restaurant on Newbury Street. Sending photos now. I smiled coldly. And it seems Michael is about to make things even worse for himself. Judge Matthews sighed, reaching for her pen. I'll sign the order enforcing the infidelity clause. The trust assets will be frozen immediately pending final distribution according to the secondary beneficiary provisions. She paused. That would be you, Rebecca, as Eleanor's chosen successor. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Thank you, Your Honor. And about the Wilson Technologies case. I'll have my clerk prepare the necessary documents for an emergency hearing, she said. This needs to be addressed immediately. As we left the courthouse, Sarah hurried to keep up with my stride. What now? Now, I said, checking my phone as more photos came in. We wait for Michael to dig himself even deeper. He's meeting with James Wilson as we speak, probably trying to damage control. But he doesn't know about the trust order yet. I showed her the latest photo, Michael and James Wilson, in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Let's see how he handles losing $50 million and his biggest client in the same day. Back at my office, I settled in to wait. It wouldn't take long for the news to spread. In Boston's legal community, news like this traveled fast. I had already drafted emails to the firm's board of directors, attaching proof of Michael's indiscretions and the potential compromise of the Wilson Technologies case. Sure enough, within an hour, my phone started ringing. First, it was Amanda. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "My father just called me. He's furious. He says Michael might have compromised our entire case." "Your father?" I repeated innocently. "Oh, you mean James Wilson? The same James Wilson whose company is being represented by my husband? Sorry, soon-to-be ex-husband, in a $100 million intellectual property dispute? That must be awkward." There was a long pause. "This isn't what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "Actually, Amanda, I think this is exactly what I think. You used your father's connection to get a job at Harrison and Brooks, got close to the lead counsel on your father's case, and now you're conveniently pregnant with his child. The only question is whether you planned this from the beginning or if it was just a happy coincidence." "You're going to regret this," she hissed, but the fear in her voice was unmistakable. "No, Amanda, you're going to regret this. Because now your father is probably realizing that his entire legal strategy might be compromised. And Michael? He's about to lose everything. His money, his position, his reputation. I wonder how interested he'll be in playing happy families with you when he's facing an ethics investigation and possible disbarment." I hung up before she could respond, just as another call came in, this time from the firm's senior partner, Richard Brooks. "Rebecca," he said gravely, "we need to talk about Michael." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "I assume you've received my email about the Wilson Technologies situation." "It's troubling," he admitted. "We're calling an emergency board meeting. Your presence would be appreciated." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Of course. I'll bring all the relevant documentation, including the trust order from Judge Matthews." As I gathered my things for the board meeting, Sarah appeared in my doorway. "Michael's here," she said quietly. "He's demanding to see you." I nodded, taking my time organizing my files. Let him. Wait. I have a feeling he's about to learn a very valuable lesson about consequences. Through my office window, I could see Michael pacing in the reception area, his usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled. It was a far cry from the polished managing partner who had seemed untouchable just yesterday. "Tell him," I said to Sarah, "that I'll see him at the board meeting. And Sarah, make sure security is on standby. Something tells me this isn't going to be a quiet discussion." The Harrison and Brooks boardroom had always impressed visitors with its old-world grandeur, rich mahogany walls, leather chairs, and a view of Boston Harbor that spoke of power and tradition. Today, that same room felt like a courtroom, and Michael was about to face a jury of his peers. I sat at the far end of the table, directly opposite Michael's usual seat at the head. Richard Brooks, the senior partner, occupied that position now. The other board members filed in slowly, their faces grim. Everyone had read my email. Everyone knew what was at stake. Michael burst in last, his face flushed with anger. He'd clearly been drinking, something I'd never seen him do during business hours in our 12 years of marriage. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I saw something dangerous flash across his face. "You scheming bitch!" he snarled, taking a step toward me. Two security guards immediately moved forward from their positions by the door, but I held up my hand to stop them. "Please, Michael," I said calmly. "Let's keep this professional. We wouldn't want to add workplace harassment to your growing list of problems." Richard Brooks cleared his throat. "Michael, sit down. This is still a board meeting, and we will maintain decorum." Michael laughed bitterly but took his seat. "Decorum? My wife has just destroyed my life, and you want decorum?" "Your life?" Raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice of words. Let's talk about destroying things, shall we?" I opened my laptop, connecting it to the boardroom's display screen. "Mr. Brooks, members of the board, I've prepared a comprehensive presentation of the situation we're facing." The first slide appeared, a timeline of Michael's affair with Amanda, complete with hotel receipts, email exchanges, and surveillance photos. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "This alone would be troubling enough," I continued, my voice steady. "A managing partner having an affair with his secretary. Hardly the image Harrison and Brooks wants to project. But it gets worse." I clicked to the next slide. Amanda Wilson isn't just any secretary. She's the daughter of James Wilson, CEO of Wilson Technologies, our firm's biggest client. A client whose $100 million intellectual property case is being handled personally by Michael. The room erupted in murmurs. Michael's face had gone from red to white. "That's not," he started, but I cut him off. "Not what? Not a massive conflict of interest? Not a potential ethics violation that could destroy this firm's reputation? Not a betrayal of everything Eleanor Harrison built?" I turned to face the board directly. "And now, Ms. Wilson is pregnant. With Michael's child. Imagine the headlines if this gets out." Richard Brooks removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Michael, is this true? All of it?" Before Michael could answer, the boardroom door opened again. James Wilson himself walked in, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Behind him was Amanda, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, it's true," Wilson said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "My daughter just confirmed everything, though she neglected to tell me about her condition." He turned to Michael. "I trusted you with my company's future, Harrison. Instead, you were busy seducing my daughter?" Michael stood up, desperation clear in his voice. "Jim, I can explain. This doesn't affect the case. I've kept everything completely separate." "Separate?" I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain these emails? The ones where you discuss case strategy with Amanda? Or these phone records showing calls to Wilson Technologies competitors right after your business trips together?" The color drained from James Wilson's face. "What calls?" I smiled coldly. "It seems your daughter wasn't the only one. Playing both sides, Mr. Wilson. Michael has been hedging his bets. Those calls were to your main competitor's legal department. I'm sure the ethics board will be very interested in reviewing them." Amanda stepped forward, her designer dress now wrinkled, her perfect makeup smeared with tears. "Michael, you promised." You said we would be together." "Amanda, please," Michael pleaded. "Not now." "Yes, now," she cried. "I'm carrying your child and you're trying to play both sides? Was any of it real?" I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered her sitting in my kitchen that morning, so smug, so certain of her victory. "Mr. Brooks," I said, turning to the senior partner, "I've already filed a motion with the ethics board. Given the circumstances, I believe the firm needs to take immediate action to protect its interests and its clients." Richard Brooks nodded slowly. "Michael Harrison, you are hereby suspended from all duties at Harrison & Brooks, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings." "You can't do this," Michael said, his voice cracking. "This is my firm. My name is on the door." "Actually," I interjected, "according to the partnership agreement Eleanor put in place, any partner found to have violated ethical guidelines can be removed by a board vote. And given that you've lost your share of the family trust due to the infidelity clause, you no longer meet the capital requirements to maintain your partnership." Michael turned to me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "Rebecca, please. Everything we've built together. Save it." I cut him off. "You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with your secretary and compromise our biggest client's case." I turned to James Wilson. "Mr. Wilson, I want to assure you that Harrison & Brooks takes this breach very seriously. I'll personally oversee the transition of your case to a new legal team." Wilson nodded curtly. "We'll discuss the future of our relationship with the firm later. Right now, I need to have a very serious conversation with my daughter." He grabbed Amanda's arm, pulling her toward the door. "And Harrison, expect to hear from my lawyers, personal lawyers." As they left, Michael sank back into his chair, all his arrogance finally stripped away. The board members began gathering, their things, none of them meeting his eyes. Years of relationships, power, and prestige, all gone in an afternoon. "Rebecca," he said softly as I packed up my laptop, "what am I supposed to do now?" I paused, looking at him one last time. "That's not my problem anymore, Michael. But I hear there are plenty of law firms in Boston looking for junior associates. You might want to start there, assuming the ethics board lets you keep your license." As I walked out of the boardroom, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors, I felt lighter than I had in years. Michael had always prided himself on being the smartest person in the room, the one who could talk his way out of anything. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I had learned from the best, him, and I had just beaten him at his own game. The security guards were already approaching his office as I passed by. Through the glass walls, I could see him standing there, staring at the view of Boston Harbor, a view he would never see from this office again. His empire was crumbling, and he had no one to blame but himself. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Judge Matthews signed the final trust order. It's done." I smiled, stepping into the elevator. Michael had lost everything: his money, his position, his reputation, and his future. And somewhere in heaven, I was sure Eleanor Harrison was smiling too. Her infidelity clause had finally served its purpose, though I doubt even she could have predicted it would be used to take down her own grandson. The morning after the board meeting, I arrived at the office early. The firm was buzzing with whispers and sidelong glances. News travels fast in Boston's legal community. Michael's name had already been removed from his office door, the space inside dark and empty. It was remarkable how quickly 12 years of marriage and a lifetime of legal career could be reduced to a few cardboard boxes. Sarah met me at my office door, tablet in hand. "The Boston Legal Journal wants a statement about Michael's departure, and the Ethics Board has scheduled an emergency hearing for next week." She paused, lowering her voice. "Also, Amanda Wilson's father has filed a formal complaint with the Bar Association." I settled behind my desk, taking a moment to enjoy my coffee. "Forward all press inquiries to the firm's PR team. As for the Ethics Board," I smiled slightly, "make sure they receive the complete file. Every email, every phone record, every hotel receipt. Already done." Sarah nodded. But there's something else. She placed a thick manila envelope on my desk. This came from Eleanor's old private investigator this morning. Apparently, Michael and Amanda weren't as careful as they thought. Inside the envelope were photos, dozens of them. Michael and Amanda at various hotels, restaurants, private meetings with Wilson Technologies, competitors. But what caught my eye was a series of photographs taken at Eleanor's summer house in the Hamptons. The same house where we'd celebrated our anniversaries, where we'd planned to start a family. When were these taken? I asked, my voice tight. Last month, Sarah replied. The weekend you were in Chicago for the Bar Association conference. The anger I'd been controlling so carefully threatened to surface. Using Eleanor's house, that was a special kind of betrayal. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that revenge was best served cold. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Amanda. We need to talk, please. There's more you need to know. I showed the message to Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. Are you going to meet her? Of course, I replied, already typing a response. But on my terms. Tell security to expect her in an hour. And Sarah, have someone from HR sit in. I want everything on record. The next hour passed slowly as I prepared for whatever new drama Amanda was bringing to my door. I reviewed the trust documents again, making sure every detail was perfect. Eleanor had built an empire on attention to detail, and I wasn't about to let her down now. When Amanda arrived, she looked nothing like the confident young woman who had sat in my kitchen just days ago. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup hastily applied, her eyes red from crying. Mrs. Harrison, the HR representative began, but I cut her off. It's Ms. Walker now, I corrected, reverting to my maiden name. I've already filed the divorce papers. Amanda flinched at that but took a seat across from my desk. I needed to tell you about Michael and the case. I leaned back in my chair, studying her carefully. More ethics violations? Or is this about the pregnancy? She twisted her hands in her lap, avoiding my gaze. Both. Michael, he wasn't just sharing case information with me. He was selling information to our competitors, using me as a cover for his meetings. The HR representative started taking notes furiously as Amanda continued. And the baby... She paused, tears welling up. I'm not really 8 weeks pregnant. I'm 12 weeks. And it might not be Michael's. I kept my face carefully neutral, though inside I was laughing at the irony. Might not be? There was someone else, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Another partner at Wilson Technologies. Michael doesn't know. I thought if he believed it was his, he'd leave you, take care of us with the Harrison money. How did that work out for you? I asked coldly. She broke down completely then, mascara running down her cheeks. My father has cut me off. The firm is investigating me. My whole life is ruined. Your life is ruined? I repeated, my voice sharp. You came into my home, slept with my husband, tried to manipulate your way into my family's money, and now you want sympathy? I'm sorry, she sobbed. I never meant for it to go this far. Michael said a lot of things, didn't he? I interrupted. He told you about the Harrison money, about the power you'd have, about the future you'd share, but he never told you about Eleanor's ironclad trust conditions, did he? Never mentioned that his entire inheritance depended on fidelity? Amanda shook her head miserably. And now here you are, I continued, pregnant with possibly another man's child. Your father's company compromised, your reputation in tatters. Tell me, was it worth it? The HR representative cleared her throat. Ms. Wilson, given the circumstances, I need to inform you that your position at Harrison and Brooks is being terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear. Out your desk. Amanda stood on shaky legs. What am I supposed to do now? I looked at her coldly. that's not my concern. But if I were you, I'd be more worried about explaining to your father how you helped Michael compromise his company's legal case. And perhaps you should inform the other potential father about the baby. I'm sure the paternity test results will be interesting. As security led her away, Sarah came in with more updates. The ethics board wants to move up Michael's hearing. Apparently, there's been another complaint? Something about offshore accounts? I smiled. Ah, yes, the Peterson case. Michael's little secret project. Send them the files from Eleanor's private safe. The ones about the hidden accounts in the Cayman Islands. Sarah's eyes widened. You knew about those? Eleanor knew everything, I replied. She kept records of all Michael's indiscretions, financial and otherwise. She was waiting for the right moment to use them. I guess that moment is now. My phone buzzed again. Michael this time. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what he wanted. He'd be discovering the offshore account revelations soon enough. His carefully constructed world wasn't just crumbling, it was being systematically demolished, brick by brick. Should I have his things from the house sent somewhere? Sarah asked. I considered for a moment. Have them delivered to his mother's house in Beacon Hill, along with copies of all the evidence, the affair, the ethics violations, everything. She should know exactly why her son lost his inheritance. Looking out my office window at the Boston skyline, I felt a sense of completion. Michael had gambled everything, his marriage, his career, his inheritance, on the assumption that he was smarter than everyone else. He'd forgotten that I had learned from the best. Eleanor Harrison herself, a woman who had turned betrayal into an art form of consequences. One more thing, I told Sarah. Contact the contractor. I want Eleanor's summer house in the Hamptons. Completely renovated. New furniture. New everything. I think it's time for a fresh start. The game wasn't quite over yet, but the end game was in sight. Michael would face the ethics board next week. Amanda would deal with her father and her complicated pregnancy, and I would rebuild, stronger than ever, just as Eleanor had taught me. The ethics board hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. at the Massachusetts Bar Association building. I arrived early, watching as other players in this drama filtered into the historic, courthouse-style room. Michael's mother, Patricia Harrison, sat in the back row, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, but her face drawn with worry. She avoided my gaze. The copies of evidence I'd sent her had done their job. All files are ready, Sarah whispered, setting down a leather briefcase beside me. The offshore account documentation, the Wilson Technologies evidence, everything. She paused, checking her phone. And there's something else. Amanda Wilson just checked into Boston General. Apparently, there are complications with the pregnancy. I absorbed this information silently. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for Amanda. She was young, foolish, and had played a game far beyond her capabilities. But sympathy wouldn't stop what was coming next. Michael arrived last, flanked by 2 attorneys from a rival firm. He looked haunted, his usual confident stride replaced by the hesitant steps of a man walking to his own execution. His eyes met mine briefly, and I saw a flash of desperate pleading in them. The ethics board members filed in, 5 senior attorneys and judges who held the power to end Michael's legal career. Judge Matthews was among them, her face stern as she took her seat at the center of the panel. This emergency hearing is now in session, she announced, her voice carrying through the now silent room. We are here to address serious allegations of ethical misconduct against Michael Harrison, former managing partner of Harrison and Brooks. Michael's lead attorney stood. Your Honors, before we begin, my client would like to make a statement. Judge Matthews nodded. Proceed. Michael rose slowly, straightening his tie, a nervous habit I'd observed countless times during our marriage. Members of the board, I admit to exercising poor judgment in my personal life, but my professional conduct has always been, objection, I called out standing. As a complainant, I had the right to participate. Mr. Harrison's poor judgment directly impacted his professional conduct. I have evidence of multiple ethics violations that go far beyond personal indiscretions. I opened the leather briefcase, removing the first set of documents. Exhibit A: records of offshore accounts used to hide funds from the Peterson case settlement. Mr. Harrison deliberately misled both the court and his clients about the true amount of the settlement. Michael's attorneys scrambled to respond, but I wasn't finished. Exhibit B: documentation of Mr. Harrison sharing privileged client information with Amanda Wilson, who then passed this information to competitors of Wilson Technologies. This represents a serious breach of attorney-client privilege. The room erupted in murmurs. Patricia Harrison let out a small gasp from the back row. Furthermore, I continued, Mr. Harrison used his position as managing partner to manipulate firm resources for personal gain. The Hamptons property, owned by the Harrison Family Trust, was used for unauthorized meetings with clients' competitors, all while billing the firm for supposed client development. Judge Matthews leaned forward. These are extremely serious allegations, Ms. Walker. Do you have documentation to support all of them? Every single one, I replied, patting the thick stack of files before me, including surveillance photos, bank records, and email correspondence. Eleanor Harrison kept meticulous records. Michael's face had gone ashen. Eleanor knew? All this time? Eleanor knew everything, I said, turning to face him directly. She was waiting to see if you'd follow in your grandfather's footsteps. Congratulations. Michael, you exceeded her worst expectations. His lead attorney requested a brief recess, practically dragging Michael from the room. I could hear their heated whispers in the hallway. They were realizing just how thorough Eleanor's documentation had been. Sarah appeared at my elbow with a fresh update. Amanda's doctor just called. She's asking for Michael. Apparently there's been a development with the pregnancy. I nodded. Make sure the ethics board knows about this. His response to this crisis will be telling. When the hearing resumed, Michael looked defeated. His attorneys had clearly advised him of the futility of fighting against Eleanor's evidence. Members of the board, his lead attorney announced, in light of the evidence presented, my client wishes to voluntarily surrender his law license, pending a full investigation of these matters. Judge Matthews raised an eyebrow. And the offshore accounts? The mishandled client funds? We will cooperate fully with any investigation, the attorney replied. Mr. Harrison also agrees to make full restitution of any misappropriated funds. I stood again. Your Honors, while I appreciate Mr. Harrison's belated attempt at cooperation, there's still the matter of criminal liability. The offshore accounts, in particular, may interest the district attorney's office. Michael's head snapped up. You wouldn't. I already have, I replied calmly. The DA's office received copies of all documentation this morning. They're particularly interested in the wire transfers to the Cayman Islands. The ethics board members conferred briefly before Judge Matthews spoke again. This board accepts Mr. Harrison's voluntary surrender of his law license. We are referring all evidence of potential criminal activity to the appropriate authorities. Mr. Harrison, you are hereby prohibited from practicing law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, effective immediately. As the hearing concluded, I gathered my materials while watching Michael slump in his chair, his career and reputation in ruins. His mother approached him, her voice carrying across the now emptying room. Your grandmother would be ashamed, Patricia said quietly. She built this firm from nothing, and you've destroyed it all for what? An affair with a secretary? Michael didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the floor. His attorneys were already leaving, no doubt rushing to distance themselves from the scandal. Sarah approached with another update. Boston General called again. Amanda's asking for you specifically. I paused, considering. Tell them I'll be there in an hour. And Sarah? Make sure our PR team is ready. Once the DA's office moves forward, this is going to be front-page news. As I left the Bar Association building, I saw Michael standing alone, On the steps, staring out at the city he'd once dominated. His world hadn't just crumbled, it had been systematically dismantled piece by piece, using the very tools he'd taught me to wield. Eleanor had always said that the law was like a chess game. It wasn't enough to make one good move. You had to see 10 moves ahead. Michael had played checkers, thinking only of his immediate gratification. I had played chess, and now the game was nearly over. The next move would take place at Boston General, where Amanda waited with whatever new development her pregnancy had brought. But regardless of what happened there, Michael's fate was sealed. He had lost everything: his career, his reputation, his freedom, and soon, possibly even his liberty. As my car pulled away from the curb, I saw him reach for his phone, no doubt just receiving the news about Amanda and the pregnancy. Some part of me wondered if he would rush to her side, or if he would run from this responsibility, like he had run from every other commitment in his life. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I had my own future to build, and unlike Michael, I had learned Eleanor's most important lesson: power isn't about what you can take, it's about what you can protect and preserve. Boston General Hospital's maternity ward was quieter than I expected. The nurse led me down a sterile hallway to a private room where Amanda lay, looking smaller and younger than ever in the hospital bed. Her father, James Wilson, stood by the window, his usually commanding presence diminished by worry. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly as I entered. "I know you have no reason to be here." "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Amanda turned to face me, her eyes red from crying. "I lost the baby," she whispered. "There were complications. The doctors said it was stress-related." I sat in the chair beside her bed, studying her face. The smug young woman who had sat in my kitchen just days ago was gone, replaced by someone who looked utterly broken. "Michael hasn't come," she continued, her voice cracking. "I called him when it started, but he said he couldn't deal with this right now." James Wilson's jaw tightened. "That coward. After everything he's done." "Dad, please," Amanda interrupted. "I need to tell Rebecca something. About the baby. About everything." I waited as she gathered herself, watching as she twisted the hospital blanket between her fingers. "I lied before," she began, "about not knowing who the father was. I knew all along it wasn't Michael's. It was Tom Peterson's, the CEO of Peterson Technologies. The name hit me like a physical blow. Peterson Technologies, the company from the offshore accounts case. The pieces started falling into place. "The affair with Michael," I said slowly. "It was never about him, was it?" Amanda shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Tom wanted information about the settlement, about where the money really went. He knew Michael had hidden some of it offshore, but he couldn't prove it. So he asked me to get close to Michael, to find evidence." James Wilson stepped forward. "What are you talking about, Amanda?" "I'm so sorry, Dad," she sobbed. "Tom promised he'd help us with our IP case if I could prove Michael was corrupt. He said it would give us leverage. I never meant for it to go so far." I sat back, processing. This new information? So Michael wasn't just hiding settlement money? He was actively working against his own clients' interests. "There's more," Amanda said quietly. "In Michael's office, there's a safe behind the Monet print. Inside, there's a USB drive with everything. All the offshore transactions, the real settlement numbers, communications with foreign banks. I saw him access it once when he thought I was sleeping on his office couch." James Wilson had gone pale. "How much money are we talking about?" "Millions," Amanda whispered. "The Peterson settlement was 3 times what was reported to the court. Michael took his cut through a series of offshore transfers. That's why he was so desperate to keep me close. He thought I was just a naive secretary who had stumbled onto his secret." I pulled out my phone, typing quickly. "Sarah, get me Judge. Matthews, tell her it's urgent. And contact the DA's office. They'll want to execute a search warrant on Michael's office immediately. As I stood to leave, Amanda reached for my hand. Rebecca, I'm sorry. For everything. I never thought about how this would affect real people. You. My father. Even Michael. I was just playing a part, but somewhere along the way it all became real. I looked at her hand on mine, then back at her face. Actions have consequences, Amanda. You played with people's lives like they were pieces on a chessboard. The fact that you were a pawn in someone else's game doesn't change that. James Wilson walked me to the door. What happens now? Now? I smiled coldly. Now Michael faces criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. The DA will be very interested in both the offshore accounts and the manipulation of client funds. As for Peterson, technologies. I paused. I suggest you have your legal team review all communications with Tom Peterson. Something tells me his hands aren't clean in this either. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. The DA's office just arrived at Harrison and Brooks with a search warrant. Michael tried to access his office, but security stopped him. He's becoming volatile. Have them check behind the Monet, I instructed. And Sarah? Make sure all security footage is preserved. I have a feeling Michael's reaction to this search will be very interesting to the prosecutors. As I left the hospital, I received another text. This one from Patricia Harrison. Eleanor's private investigator found more accounts. Zurich. Singapore. Michael's been busy. I smiled, remembering Eleanor's words from years ago. The worst betrayals often have the longest paper trails. She had taught me to always look deeper, to follow the money, to understand that people's true natures revealed themselves in their desperate moments. The car radio was playing classical music, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the Fate motif echoing through the speakers. How appropriate. Michael's fate had been sealed the moment he decided to betray not just his marriage, but his professional ethics and his family's legacy. Sarah met me at my office with fresh updates. The DA's team found the USB drive exactly where Amanda said it would be, but there's something else. Michael's been trying to access the firm's client files remotely. I'd blocked his credentials, but he's becoming increasingly desperate. Of course he is, I replied, settling behind my desk. He knows what's on that drive. It's not just the Peterson case. It's years of fraudulent dealings, manipulated settlements, hidden fees. Michael didn't just break the law. He built an entire shadow practice around breaking it. The press is already calling, Sarah added. They want statements about the ethics hearing and now the criminal investigation. The Boston Globe is running a front-page story tomorrow. I nodded, pulling up Eleanor's old files on my computer. Send them this, I said, forwarding a document. Eleanor's original partnership agreement for the firm, the one that emphasizes ethical practice and client trust above all else. Let them see exactly how far Michael fell from the principles his grandmother built this firm on. As the day drew to a close, I stood at my office window, watching the sunset paint the Boston skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Michael's world hadn't just crumbled, it had imploded spectacularly, taking down everyone who had helped him maintain his web of lies. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Michael himself. You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I typed back a single response. No, Michael. You destroyed everything. I just made sure you couldn't hide from the consequences anymore. Turning off my phone, I gathered my things to leave. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, criminal investigations, press inquiries, the reshaping of Harrison and Brooks' future. But for now, I had done what Eleanor would have wanted. I had protected her legacy, exposed the corruption that had threatened to taint it, and ensured that justice would be served. As I left the office, I passed by Eleanor's portrait in the main conference room. Her stern face seemed to hold a hint of a smile now, as if she had known all along that this day would come. The truth always surfaces, she used to say. It's just a matter of who controls the timing. And timing, as it turned out, had been everything. 1 week after the hospital visit, I sat in my newly renovated office, formerly Michael's corner suite, reviewing the aftermath of what the Boston Globe had dubbed the Harrison scandal. The morning papers were spread across my desk, each headline more dramatic than the last. Harrison and Brooks' managing partner faces criminal charges. Legal dynasty rocked by fraud allegations. $1 million settlement scheme exposed, Sarah entered. With my morning coffee and the latest updates. The DA's office has filed formal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, misappropriation of client funds. 17 counts in total. They're offering a plea deal, but Michael's new criminal defense attorney isn't optimistic. I took a sip of coffee, savoring both the flavor and the moment. And Peterson Technologies? Tom Peterson resigned as CEO this morning. The board called an emergency meeting after the SEC opened an investigation into the settlement irregularities. She paused, checking her tablet. Amanda Wilson has agreed to testify against both Michael and Peterson. Her father's legal team negotiated immunity in exchange for her full cooperation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amanda, who had walked into my kitchen so confidently just weeks ago, was now the star witness in multiple criminal investigations. Her pregnancy lie had unraveled everything, not just Michael's marriage, but his entire criminal enterprise. My phone lit up with a text from Patricia Harrison. Rebecca, can we meet? There are things about Eleanor's estate that we need to discuss. I responded with a lunch invitation. Patricia had been surprisingly supportive throughout this ordeal, perhaps recognizing that I had done what Eleanor would have wanted, protected the firm's integrity at any cost. The renovation crew finished at the Hamptons house, Sarah continued. All traces of Michael and Amanda's visits have been erased. The new furniture arrives next week. I nodded, standing to look out at the Boston skyline. My view now, not Michael's. Schedule the board meeting for tomorrow. It's time to discuss the firm's future. The elevator dinged and security called up. Michael was in the lobby, demanding to see me. Despite the restraining order, despite the criminal charges, despite everything, he still thought he could talk his way out of this. Let him come up, I instructed. But have security ready. Minutes later, Michael burst into my office, looking nothing like the polished attorney who had once commanded respect throughout Boston's legal community. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes wild, his hands shaking slightly. Are you happy now? He demanded. You've taken everything. The firm, the trust, my reputation. I remained seated, projecting calm. You took those things from yourself, Michael. I just exposed the truth. He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The truth? You want to talk about truth? What about the truth of our marriage? 12 years, Rebecca? Didn't that mean anything? It meant everything, I replied quietly. Until you decided that sleeping with your secretary and stealing from your clients was more important than our vows. I was building something, he exploded. Every deal, every settlement. I was making this firm stronger. You were breaking the law, I corrected him. And now you're facing the consequences. The DA's office has everything, Michael. The offshore accounts, the manipulated settlements, the kickbacks. Did you really think you could hide it forever? He slumped into a chair, suddenly looking old and defeated. What do you want from me? Nothing, I said simply. I don't want anything from you anymore. The criminal justice system will handle your punishment. The Bar Association will handle your professional fate. And as for us, I held up my left hand, now bare of my wedding ring. The divorce papers are with your attorney. Sign them. And what about Amanda? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Did you have to destroy her too? I felt a flash of anger. Amanda destroyed herself. She played her part in this scheme, lying about the pregnancy, helping Peterson spy on you. Though I suppose you both deserved each other. Liars using lies to catch other liars. Security appeared at my door, responding to some silent signal from Sarah. Michael stood slowly, straightening his tie in a pathetic attempt at dignity. "You know," he said, pausing, at the door, "I never thought you had it in you, to be this ruthless." I smiled coldly. "I learned from the best, Michael. You and Eleanor. You both taught me that power isn't about force, it's about patience, about waiting for the right moment to strike." I gestured to the office around us. "Consider this my final exam." As security led him away, I could hear his voice carrying down the hallway, a broken man's last attempt at defiance. But it didn't matter anymore. Michael's words, like his promises, had lost all power. Patricia Harrison arrived precisely at noon, elegant as always in her Chanel suit. She carried a large envelope, Eleanor's personal papers, I realized. "Eleanor would be proud," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "She always said you were the true Harrison, even if you didn't have the name by blood." Opened the envelope, removing a stack of documents. "There's something you should see. Eleanor's last amendment to the trust, made just before she died. She knew, Rebecca, about Michael's corruption, about the offshore accounts. She was gathering evidence, building a case." I took the papers, reading through Eleanor's meticulous notes. Everything was there. The first signs of Michael's ethical breaches, the patterns of suspicious settlements, the gradual corruption of the firm's principals. "Why didn't she expose him herself?" I asked. Patricia smiled sadly. She wanted to see if he could change, if the trust and the firm's legacy would mean more to him than his greed. And, she paused, she wanted to see if you would be strong. Enough to do what needed to be done when the time came. "A test," I murmured. "A succession plan," Patricia corrected. Eleanor knew the firm would need someone with not just the skill, but the strength to protect what she built. That's why she made you trustee, why she left you those files. She was preparing you. I sat back, processing this information. This time, I thought I had been acting on my own, driven by betrayal and a desire for justice. But Eleanor had seen it coming, had laid the groundwork for this very moment. "There's more," Patricia continued. "The board is meeting tomorrow to vote on the firm's new name. Eleanor left specific instructions about that too." She handed me one final document, Eleanor's last wishes for the firm she had built from nothing. As I read it, I felt tears prick at my eyes for the first time since this whole ordeal began. "Walker and Brooks," I read aloud. "She wanted my name on the door?" Patricia nodded. "She said the firm needed someone who understood that justice and ethics weren't just words on a mission statement. They were principles worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for." As she left, I stood at the window again, watching the city below. Michael's world had crumbled, yes, but from its ruins, something stronger would rise. Eleanor had known that too, had planned for it, had prepared me for it. My phone buzzed with a final update from Sarah. Michael's attorney called. "He's accepting the plea deal. 15 years, minimum security, full restitution to clients." "Thank you, Sarah," I replied. "And schedule a press conference for after tomorrow's board meeting. It's time to announce the firm's new direction." The sun was setting over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of victory. Eleanor had been right. Power wasn't about destruction. It was about reconstruction. About taking the broken pieces and building something better. Walker and Brooks would rise from the ashes of the Harrison scandal, stronger and more ethical than ever. And somewhere I knew Eleanor was smiling. 3 months after Michael accepted his plea deal, I stood in Eleanor's recently renovated summer house in the Hamptons. The ocean breeze carried away the last traces of autumn, and with it, the final remnants of my old life. Every room had been transformed. New furniture, new artwork, new memories waiting to be made. The master bedroom, where Michael and Amanda had betrayed me, was now my private study, Eleanor's portrait hanging prominently above the fireplace. Sarah's voice came through on speakerphone, updating me on the latest developments. The SEC investigation into Peterson Technologies is complete. Tom Peterson is facing federal charges, and the company's stock has plummeted. James Wilson's company is positioned to acquire their main patents in the bankruptcy proceedings. Life had a way of coming full circle, I thought, watching the waves crash against the private beach. And Amanda? She completed her testimony against both Michael and Peterson. The DA's office kept their immunity deal. She's moved to Seattle. Apparently, her father got her a position at their West Coast office, far away from the scandal. I walked through the house, running my fingers along the new marble countertops in the kitchen. And the firm? Walker and Brooks is officially the top-ranked corporate law firm in Boston, Sarah reported, pride evident in her voice. The American Bar Association is featuring our ethics compliance program as a model for other firms. The article mentions how we've risen from scandal to set new standards in legal ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me. Eleanor's legacy had not only survived, but thrived through this ordeal. The firm she built was stronger than ever, its reputation for integrity now unshakable. My phone buzzed with another call. Patricia Harrison. I should take this, I told Sarah. We'll finish the updates later. Patricia's voice was warm when I answered. Rebecca, dear, I've just come from visiting Michael at the federal prison. I settled into one of the new leather armchairs, preparing myself. How is he? Broken, she said simply. He wanted me to ask you something. About Eleanor's last amendment to the trust, the one that named you as his successor. He wants to know if you knew all along. I thought back to those final conversations with Eleanor, the subtle ways she had prepared me for this moment. Not everything, I admitted, but she taught me to watch, to wait, to recognize when someone was choosing power over principle. She would be proud, Patricia said softly. Not just of how you handled Michael's betrayal, but of how you've rebuilt the firm. Walker and Brooks is everything she hoped Harrison and Brooks could be. After ending the call, I walked to Eleanor's study, the one room I hadn't renovated. Her presence was strongest here, in the leather-bound law books and the old case files she had meticulously maintained. Opening her desk drawer, I pulled out a letter I had found among her personal papers, dated just weeks before her death. My dear Rebecca, it began. If you're reading this, then you've discovered what I've long suspected about Michael. The corruption, the ethical breaches, the betrayals. You're probably wondering why I didn't stop him myself, why I left this burden to you. The answer is simple. I needed to know that the firm would have a guardian after I was gone. Someone who understood that true power lies not in the ability to break rules, but in the strength to uphold them. You were never just my grandson's wife, Rebecca. You were the daughter I chose, the one who understood what I built and why I built it. The trust, the firm, the legacy, they were always meant for you. Michael's betrayal was his test, but it was your opportunity. Show them what it means to lead with integrity. Show them what a Harrison woman can do. I folded the letter carefully, returning it to its place. Eleanor had known, not just about Michael's corruption, but about the strength she had cultivated in me. She had turned Michael's betrayal into my triumph, his weakness into my power. My phone buzzed again, the DA's office. Ms. Walker? We've discovered additional offshore accounts. It seems Mr. Harrison's criminal activities extended further than we initially thought. We'll need your cooperation for this new phase of the investigation. Of course, I replied. Send. Everything to my office. I'll help however I can. After ending the call, I walked onto the beach house's deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. Michael's web of lies was still unraveling, each new discovery confirming Eleanor's wisdom in choosing her successor. Sarah texted one final update for the day. Michael's former clients are all transferring their business to Walker and Brooks. The Peterson case settlements are being redistributed, The firm's revenue is up 40% this quarter. I smiled, thinking of Eleanor's favorite saying, "Success is the best revenge, but integrity is the best legacy." She had taught me well, not just about law and power, but about patience, about justice, about the importance of building something that would last. The autumn wind carried the salt spray across the deck, and with it, a sense of completion. Michael had lost everything: his freedom, his reputation, his future. Amanda had fled across the country, her dreams of wealth and status shattered. Tom Peterson was facing federal charges, his company in ruins. But I had gained something far more valuable than revenge. I had inherited Eleanor's true legacy, not just the firm and the trust, but the responsibility to uphold the principles she had lived by. Walker & Brooks would continue her work, protecting clients, upholding ethics, setting standards for the legal community. As the stars began to appear over the Atlantic, I raised my glass in a silent toast to Eleanor. She had seen this moment, coming, had prepared me for it, had trusted me to carry her legacy forward. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't destroying Michael's world. It was building something better from its ruins. The next morning would bring new challenges, new cases, new opportunities to prove Eleanor right. But for now, I stood in the growing darkness, at peace with the knowledge that justice had been served, not just through Michael's punishment, but through the transformation of everything he had tried to corrupt. Eleanor's final lesson had been her greatest. True power isn't in the ability to destroy, but in the strength to rebuild, to transform, to create something lasting from the ashes of betrayal. As I watched the lights of distant ships on the horizon, I knew that lesson would guide Walker & Brooks, and me, into a future Eleanor would have been proud of. 1 year to the day after Amanda Wilson walked into my kitchen with her life-changing announcement, I stood at the podium in the Harvard Law School auditorium, preparing to deliver the commencement address. The irony wasn't lost on me. A year ago, my world had seemed to be ending. Now, I was being held up as an example of legal ethics and professional integrity. Success in law isn't just about winning cases, I began, looking out at the sea of eager faces. It's about understanding that every decision we make shapes not just our careers, but the very foundation of justice itself. From my position on stage, I could see Sarah in the audience, nodding encouragingly. She had been promoted to Chief Operations Officer of Walker & Brooks, her loyalty and integrity rewarded just as Eleanor would have wanted. Beside her sat Patricia Harrison, elegant as ever, representing the bridge between the firm's past and its future. A year ago, I continued, I stood in my kitchen listening to a young woman tell me that my husband was having her child. It seemed like my world was ending, but sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. The students leaned forward, drawn in by the personal narrative. They had all read about the Harrison scandal, the criminal charges, the ethical violations, but they hadn't heard this part of the story. Eleanor Harrison, the founder of what was then Harrison & Brooks, used to say that character isn't built in moments of comfort. It's forged in moments of crisis. When faced with betrayal, we have two choices. We can let it destroy us, or we can use it to build something stronger. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. Probably another update about Michael. His prison sentence had been extended after the discovery of more offshore accounts, the web of financial fraud extending further than anyone had initially suspected. But that was no longer my concern. Walker & Brooks was born from a crisis of ethics, but it has become something more. A testament to the principle that integrity isn't just a word we put in our mission statements. It's the foundation upon which we build our careers, our relationships, and our legacy. In the front row, I spotted James Wilson, who had become one of our biggest clients after the dust settled. His company had not only survived the scandal, but thrived, acquiring key patents from the now bankrupt Peterson Technologies. Amanda, I had heard, was still in Seattle, working in his company's legal department, far from the temptations and ambitions that had led to her downfall. When Eleanor Harrison built her firm, she wasn't just creating a business, she was establishing a standard that each of us, as legal professionals, must strive to uphold. Because at the end of the day, our reputation isn't built on the cases we win, but on the principles we maintain while winning them. The auditorium was silent, hundreds of future lawyers absorbing the lesson that had cost Michael everything to teach. Your choices, I wanted to tell them, will follow you. Every compromise, every ethical breach, every moment of choosing expediency over integrity, they all leave marks that can't be erased. The law isn't just about statutes and precedents, I continued. It's about trust. Trust between attorney and client, trust between partners, trust in the very system we serve. When we breach that trust, we don't just damage our own careers, we undermine the foundation of justice itself. After the speech, at the reception, young lawyers and students crowded around, eager to discuss the firm's ethics compliance program, now being adopted by law firms across the country. But my attention was drawn to a familiar figure standing quietly at the edge of the crowd, Tom Peterson's daughter, Emily. She approached hesitantly, her father's disgrace still a fresh wound. Ms. Walker, I wanted to thank you. What happened with my father and your husband? It opened my eyes. I'm starting law school in the fall, and I want to specialize in corporate ethics. I studied her face, seeing the same determination I had once seen in my own reflection. Come see me when you graduate, I told her. Walker & Brooks is always looking for lawyers who understand the value of integrity. Later that evening, back in my office, Eleanor's old office, I reviewed the firm's latest achievements. Our client list had grown, our reputation stronger than ever. The scandal that should have destroyed us had instead become our foundation stone, a reminder of why ethics mattered. Sarah brought in the latest financial reports and a copy of the American Bar Association Journal. The cover story featured Walker & Brooks, From Scandal to Standard Bearer, How One Firm's Crisis Changed Legal Ethics. The Guardian program launches next month, she reminded me, referring to our new initiative to mentor young lawyers in ethical practice. We already have 50 firms signed up to participate. I nodded, touching Eleanor's portrait on the wall. She would have loved this, turning a betrayal into a force for positive change. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Michael's appeal was denied. He's serving the full extended sentence. I didn't respond. Michael's fate was no longer my concern. He had chosen his path, just as I had chosen mine. The difference was, my path had led to something greater than revenge. It had led to transformation. Walking to the window, I looked out at the Boston skyline, remembering that morning, in my kitchen when Amanda had delivered her news. She had thought she was destroying my world, but instead, she had helped me find my true purpose. Eleanor's last letter sat framed on my desk, a daily reminder of the legacy I now carried. Show them what a Harrison woman can do. I had done more than that. I had shown them what integrity could build from the ashes of betrayal. The sun was setting over the harbor, another day ending in a city that had watched the Harrison scandal unfold and Walker & Brooks rise from its ruins. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to uphold the principles Eleanor had instilled. But that was the point, wasn't it? Every day was a choice between expedience and ethics, between power and principle. Michael had chosen power and lost everything. I had chosen principle and gained something far more valuable, a legacy worth protecting, a future worth building, and a reminder that the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in creating something stronger from the experience. I gathered my things to leave. Sarah appeared one last time. The Harvard Law Review wants to do a piece on the firm's transformation. They're calling it The Walker Way, Rebuilding Trust in Legal Practice. I smiled, thinking of Eleanor's words. Success is the best revenge, but integrity is the best legacy. She had been right, as always. The best revenge wasn't in Michael's imprisonment or Amanda's exile or even in the firm's success. It was in the knowledge that from their betrayal, something meaningful had emerged. A new standard, a higher purpose, a lasting legacy. Walking out of the office that evening, I carried not just Eleanor's lessons, but the certainty that sometimes, the darkest moments of our lives can lead us to our brightest purpose. The betrayal that was meant to destroy me had instead revealed my true strength, and in doing so, had changed not just my life, but the very landscape of legal ethics in Boston. And that I realized was the greatest victory of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.